Merv Griffin had it all. He invented Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. He earned billions and owned hotels. He was adored by Hollywood. However, he was sued by two men in 1991. For palimony, one asked $200 million. The other made a sexual harassment claim. The harm was done, even if both lawsuits were dropped. Even after he passed away in 2007, the rumors continued. Even though he had established an empire, these charges were the one stain he was unable to remove. On July 6, 1925, Merv Griffin was born in San Mateo, a peaceful, affluent town close to San Francisco. Although his family was wealthy, it was short-lived. His father was a stockbroker who lost a large portion of their fortune when the Great Depression struck. They took up residence in a tiny apartment. Merv and his sister were forced to share a room. He carried that early taste of financial instability with him for the rest of his life. He grew up aware of how rapidly everything may vanish, despite the fact that he would go on to produce game shows valued at billions of dollars. Merv wasn't popular in school. He was shy and overweight, weighing around 240 pounds as a youngster. He was out of place. However, he possessed an ability that most children do not. While waiting for confession at the age of 7, a priest saw him humming in perfect harmony. He soon became a member of the church choir. He began playing Bach on the church organ at the age of 10. He hardly touched the pedals with his feet. He made $35 a week by the age of 15, which is equivalent to $650 today, is the official organizer. Every day he spent hours practicing, sometimes until his fingers started to bleed. He accomplished all of this without taking a single music lesson. He had superb pitch, and learned by ear. Merv was ambitious too. In order to meet military requirements, he shed 25 pounds, and joined the ROTC in college. However, a heart murmur prevented him from serving in World War II in 1944 when he was 18. Roughly 39% of his peers enlisted in the military. Merv remained. He felt bad about it. He took what action he could. Over the following 2 years, he entertained injured soldiers at hospitals in California with 127 USO shows. He had an unanticipated advantage because of that missing draft. Merv had no competition in entertainment, while others were abroad, and he made good use of that time. Fans were astounded by his appearance immediately following his first significant radio performance in 1944. He was still heavy, but his voice was lovely. In just 4 months, Merv lost 80 pounds because he was determined to change. He had a terrible diet: cigarettes, black coffee, and one meal every day. However, it was successful. After hearing him on the radio, renowned bandleader Freddie Martin extended an employment offer to him. $250 each week, 4 times Merv's previous earnings. Merv traveled to 47 states with Martin's orchestra throughout the course of the following 4 years. He gained crowd-working skills. He performed night after night for celebrities like Frank Sinatra at the Roosevelt Hotel in New York. Together, they recorded 32 songs, with the Trolley Song, their biggest hit, peaking at number 18 on the Billboard charts. They ultimately clashed over royalties. To take a bet on himself, Merv left a $400 weekly wage. That risk was profitable. Merv successfully negotiated entry into the Coconut Grove, one of LA's most glitzy nightclubs, on November 12, 1948. He lied, claiming that he was already a San Francisco mainstay and that Sinatra had suggested him. It was all untrue. "I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts" is a stupid British novelty song that he sang during his 15-minute opening segment. The audience let forth a roar. He received 3 encore calls. 2 days after that one performance, he signed a contract with RCA Victor and was given a 6-week gig at $850 per week. 3.4 million copies of the song were sold. In remembrance of the song that began it all, Merv constructed a tribute nightclub at his own hotel decades later, which he named the Coconut Club. However, Merv had already established his own record company before to all of this. He started Panda Records when he was just 19. His debut album, Songs by Merv Griffin, 1946, was the first in America to be recorded on magnetic tape, and it was a daring step. It was more than a footnote. It altered the process of creating records. Most musicians had no influence over the production of their music, but he had complete authority over his. Merv continued to show that he wasn't a one-hit wonder, even after Coconuts made him famous. Wilhelmina, his subsequent song, was a light-hearted melody that received an Oscar nomination. Music All Hits and Never Been Kissed were his subsequent releases. His ability to sing, act, and captivate an audience was demonstrated by these songs, which aided in his pursuit of movie parts. Doris Day gave him his big break in Hollywood. She worked strings to get him a screen test at Warner Brothers after being so pleased by his performance at a nightclub. Although he didn't receive the part she had in mind, he did obtain a contract, which was more significant. Many movie parts were available as a result of that pact. For many years, Merv and Doris maintained their friendship. She made numerous appearances on his talk show, and he consistently gave her credit for launching his cinematic career. So This Is Love, which came out in 1953, was one of his first major motion pictures. Merv shared an on-screen kiss with co-star Kathryn Grayson. It wasn't as easy as it sounds now. It was an open-mouthed kiss, something that was prohibited by the stringent Hollywood regulations of the period. It was among the first to question the Hays Code, which prohibited anything deemed excessively sexual. Even if Merv didn't intend to spark a revolution, he did so at that precise moment. Hollywood was one step closer to escaping its censorship regulations after that kiss. However, Merv Griffin secretly detested the sluggishness of filmmaking. He didn't like to wait around for hours simply to say two lines in a role that wasn't well cast. He desired vitality. He desired criticism. Above all, he desired independence. So he did something daring. He left Hollywood after buying out his Warner Brothers contract. Everything altered with what followed. Griffin threw himself into the television industry. He began hosting Play Your Hunch, a brand new game program, in 1958. It was no ordinary show. After airing on CBS, it moved to ABC in early 1959 before settling on NBC. A triple network run like that was practically unheard of. It has a straightforward format. Follow your gut and choose the correct response. However, it was establishing careers behind the scenes. It showed a youthful Robert Redford. Ted Koppel, a future news anchor, did the same. Even Johnny Olson, the announcer, began his career there after filling in for Griffin twice. Though not everyone was supporting him, Griffin was rapidly earning admirers. He and Robert Q. Lewis, another host, had a long-standing feud. Griffin scoffed that old Fourier simply didn't have what the public desired when Lewis subsequently took over the show. Yes, I did. ABC recognized an opportunity to push him into prime time as his popularity increased. In 1959, they gave him control of Keep Talking. The setup of the show was smart. As one teammate narrated a story without actually speaking it, the celebrity panelists attempted to identify a secret word. The twist? The panelists' narration abruptly changed. They needed to make sure the story didn't pause. All of it was easily handled by Griffin, surrounded by celebrities such as Jane Meadows, Joey Bishop, and Orson Bean. Even when the show ended in 1960, Griffin was more than simply a midday character. He had also shown that he could control prime time. By 1963, NBC was once more interested in Griffin's potential. They gave him a larger offer this time. He would produce in addition to hosting. Word for word, the show was. And it was the beginning of Griffin's impact behind the scenes. Despite positive reviews, NBC had canceled his debut daytime talk show just months prior. Griffin, however, had negotiated well. His contract allowed him to continue producing. His next chapter began with that one sentence. Additionally, it provided him with invaluable expertise that subsequently enabled him to produce two of the most recognizable game shows in history, Jeopardy and Fortune Wheel. Nevertheless, Griffin continued to participate in chat shows. Actually, it was an accident that gave him his big break. The Tonight Show presenter Jack Paar accidentally strolled onto the set one morning while Griffin was filming Play Your Hunch. Rather than losing his cool, Griffin took advantage of the situation. He conducted an in-person interview with Paar. He was chosen to be Parr's guest host because of that spontaneous action. Between Parr's departure and Johnny Carson's debut, Griffin emerged as NBC's most productive stand-in host. He was given his own daytime talk program, but he was not chosen as the permanent replacement. It debuted on October 1, 1962, the same day that Carson made his debut. At first, Griffin's show lasted only 6 months. He wasn't finished, though. He revived it through Westinghouse Broadcasting in 1965. It was syndicated this time. This allowed local stations to broadcast a 62 or 90-minute version, day or night. Here is Merv Griffin, the beloved boy himself. After Griffin's sidekick Arthur Treacher, who introduced him with style, became a fan favorite in the background. The success of the show was noted by CBS, and gave Griffin a late-night time slot in 1969, competing against Carson. Griffin competed on network television for 3 years, gaining widespread recognition for his astute interviewing techniques and daring guest selections. However, controversy ensued. Griffin wasn't going to be safe. In 1965, he asked philosopher Bertrand Russell to criticize the Vietnam War. The reaction was instantaneous. Despite being labeled a traitor by newspapers, he refused to back down. He embraced controversial but significant voices like those of Abbie Hoffman, Dick Gregory, George Carlin, and Norman Mailer. Griffin partnered comic Phyllis Diller with Pearl Harbor attack mastermind Captain Mitsuo Fuchida in one episode. It was real, but it was also dangerous. CBS management were starting to feel uneasy by 1969. They put pressure on Griffin to include more guests who supported the war. He declined. Censors blurred Hoffman out when he donned a shirt with an American flag motif on it. It was described by Griffin as a tangle of lines. For being too old, they even urged him to fire Treacher. He resisted. Even though Griffin defeated the Joey Bishop program, he was unable to unseat Carson. Griffin never had a fair chance, and CBS had fewer affiliate stations. He went back to syndication in 1972 because he was tired of interference. The show was salvaged by that move. Without corporate hands holding him down, it continued for another 14 years. Griffin had a distinctive interview style. Griffin literally leant in, but Carson remained cool and detached. He exuded warmth. He desired for his guests to appear well. He paid attention. He made follow-up inquiries. He was concerned. He allowed interactions to last at least half an hour rather than brief advertising ones. He interviewed more than 25,000 guests over the years. Orson Welles, his hero, the director, made around 50 appearances. Griffin even gave some guests whole episodes, making them feel less like entertainment showcases and more like chats in the living room. And he welcomed folks like Zaza Gabor, who came on just to chat, even though they had nothing to sell. Audiences were not the only ones who adored the show. It received 10 Emmys. It received 4 additional nominations and 1 for Outstanding Directing in 1985 alone. Mort Lindsay's music received consecutive nominations in 1970 and 1971. In 1971, Griffin received a Golden Globe nomination for Best TV Actor in a Comedy or Musical. Additionally, he was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 2008, 1 year after his passing. Merv Griffin and his wife, Julianne, were returning to New York via plane in 1963. The 1950s quiz show scandals had tainted TV executives' perceptions of trivia shows. Julianne, however, had a crazy notion. What if you made people guess the questions and then gave them the answers? There in the cabin, she put her theory to the test. 5,280, she stated. How many feet in a mile? Merv asked. One of the most recognizable television programs in history was ignited by that spark. Jeopardy, by March 30, 1964, had broadcast its debut episode. It was well received. The host was Art Fleming. The show felt smarter than anything else on daytime TV, and the format was brilliant. But Jeopardy was intended for another reason. Its theme music is timeless. In under a minute, Griffin composed the song Think as a lullaby for his son. That 30-second song would eventually generate more than $100 million in royalties for him. Among the most successful jingles ever created was this one. Griffin wasn't finished, though. At the same time, he had another notion inspired by his recollections of playing games with his sister as a child. Hangman, straightforward but captivating. He added that to his interest in roulette wheels. He presented the idea to NBC, but Lynn Boland, an executive there, stated that it needed more glitz and something to draw in female viewers. They included a shopping component, developed an odd prototype known as Shopper's Bazaar, complete with rotary phones and a vertical wheel, and ultimately decided on a final version. The official launch of Wheel of Fortune took place on January 6, 1975. It would go on to become the world's longest-running syndicated game program. Griffin transformed his little production firm into a game show empire by the middle of the 1980s. He made a shocking move in Hollywood in 1986. For $250 million, he sold Columbia Pictures' Merv Griffin Enterprises. It was the largest selling of a single-owner entertainment company at the time. Griffin rose to become Hollywood's wealthiest entertainer, yet he had struck a deal that most artists can only imagine. The rights to continuing royalties were retained by him. The money continued to flow in even after the sale. His original concepts continued to be used in new spin-offs such as Wheel 2000, Jep and Rock and Roll Jeopardy. However, not all shows were successful. Griffin took a chance. He founded Let's Play Post Office in 1965, set in a cartoon-like mailroom. This NBC program is eccentric. Participants received rewards ranging from $5 to $100 for their responses to pun-based puzzles. Just one hint: there is no temperature. I must tell you, in most cases the answer is 0. Less than a year passed. With music by Herb Alpert, he released Reach for the Stars 2 years later. It lasted for just 65 episodes. His momentum was unaffected by his brief performances. They simply demonstrated his constant experimentation. Griffin was more than a showman. He was establishing an empire. He took his riches and set higher goals after the 1986 sale, which brought around $250 million. He paid $100,200,000 for the Beverly Hilton Hotel in December 1987. The facility has recently undergone a $35 million makeover. He didn't initially choose it. The Sultan of Brunei acquired the Beverly Hills Hotel, which he had desired. The Beverly Hilton did, however, have a past. Presidents, celebrities, and important events were held there. It became the location of the Golden Globe Awards and other Hollywood events while Griffin owned it. Later, the hotel lost its luster, according to critics. However, it became an icon once more because to Griffin's showbiz touch, then Resorts International, his biggest gamble appeared. When Donald Trump attempted to take over, Griffin resisted. It was a nasty and drawn-out deal. Griffin ultimately paid $365 million, incurred $925 million in debt, and gave Trump an additional $60 million in exchange for his departure. He acquired the Paradise Island Resort and the hotels in Atlantic City. The Taj Mahal Casino was retained by Trump. Griffin referred to it as a triumph. However, the festivities were short-lived. He had taken on too much debt, primarily in trash bonds, which had interest rates close to 14%. In less than a year, Resorts International's cash flow was $70 million short. The company filed for bankruptcy in December 1989. After defeating Trump, Griffin's empire collapsed a year later. He continued to dream. Nevertheless, he revived old Hollywood with the Coconut Club in January 1998. The Beverly Hilton was converted into a glitzy nightclub every weekend. Griffin aimed to bring back the enchantment of the 1940s. Guests were greeted by a huge dance floor, velvet seats and gold palm trees. The air was filled with big band music. The ensemble was conducted by trumpeter Jack Sheldon. When he was younger, Griffin had played in venues like these. He was the owner now. There was more to the Coconut Club than nostalgia. It was a letter of love to his former self. During the 1950s, Merv Griffin was a rising star on television. In addition to his growing list of appearances, he was charming and ambitious. He met Julianne Wright at that point. She was a secretary on the Robert Q. Lewis Show, working behind the scenes. At first their encounter seemed routine, but it quickly became more than that. In 1958, they were married. Griffin's career was just getting started at the time. It was unlikely that this duo would go on to influence one of the most recognizable television programs, Jeopardy. Julene assisted Merv in coming up with ideas behind closed doors. Despite never being in the spotlight, she contributed to the development of his enterprise. In 1959, they welcomed a son, Tony. They were married for 18 years. However, the distance increased as Merv's celebrity skyrocketed. They secretly got divorced in 1976. Merv described it as a period of uncertainty and doubt, but there was only a division and no scandal. They stayed close even after they parted ways. Julene went on to establish her own legacy by doing stand-up comedy and starting California's first women's bank. They ended their relationship amicably, in contrast to most Hollywood couples. At the height of his success, Merv became a father. December 8, 1959, was the birth date of his son Tony. People began to perceive the game show tycoon as softer after that. He shielded Tony from the tumultuous world of entertainment. Nevertheless, Tony was raised in the midst of it all. He pursued his own career as an adult, appearing in movies such as Spaceballs and subsequently establishing a vineyard in Malibu. Tony presented a stirring eulogy when Merv passed away in August 2007. Although Arnold Schwarzenegger also addressed at the burial, Tony provided the most personal glimpse. He referred to his dad as the Energizer Bunny. Merv was as energetic as someone half his age, even at 82. Farah, Tony's 12-year-old daughter, performed a reading during that tearful funeral. Donovan, his small son, was designated as an honorary pallbearer. Despite their loss, the Griffin family remained resilient. Merv and Eva Gober were spotted everywhere in the late 1980s. They were too much for the media to handle. They were frequently pictured together on red carpets, at parties and at galas. There were rumors. A few believed they were in love. They would get married, some whispered. Nancy Reagan was even mentioned as a potential matron of honor. However, Gabor shut everything down in 1990. "We're not romantically involved," she stated plainly. Nevertheless, they couldn't be separated. Despite having known each other for years, their relationship grew closer while filming Return to Green Acres. According to Hollywood insiders, the partnership had two functions. It allowed them to become true friends, and shielded Merv from inquiries about his private life. Merv was devastated when Ava unexpectedly passed away in July 1995. Zaza, her sister, compared him to family. Whatever their relationship was, it persisted all the way to the end. The lawsuits followed. A man named Brent Plott stunned Hollywood on April 11, 1991, claiming to have been Merv Griffin's boyfriend and lover for 9 years. He launched a lawsuit. According to him, they moved in together in 1981. He identified himself as Griffin's driver, counselor, secretary, lover, and confidant. And he had more in mind than a few bucks. His demand was $200 million. Plott asserted that Griffin had promised him half of everything, including Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy money. He even claimed to have selected Vanna White to turn the letters and to have contributed to the creation of Wheel. He initially just requested $400,000, but he then increased it to $200 million. He said that he had moved to Los Angeles specifically for Griffin, abandoning a career in antiques. It was an explosive story. Quickly and without hesitation, Merv answered. He denied all of it. He said that Plott, a former bodyguard and horse trainer earning $250 per week, had never been his partner. He presented the lawsuit as a financial extortion attempt. Griffin's attorney referred to the allegations as ludicrous. Merv even claimed that Plott had failed a lie detector exam, despite Plott's attorney denying that the test had actually taken place. The lawsuit was abruptly dismissed by November 1991. Griffin's group refused to provide an explanation. More rumors were only stoked by that silence. Another shock: a month later, Merv was sued for sexual harassment by former Dance Fever anchor Denny Tarrio. The details were graphic. According to Tarrio, everything started before the show even aired. He claimed that Griffin had groped him, unsnapped his pants, and pushed him onto a couch. He claimed that the groping, kissing, and private dressing room visits persisted for years. Additionally, he said that Griffin used his promises to control him, including giving him ownership of the show and a cut of the earnings. Tarrio didn't speak out until 1991. He went into great depth about everything when he appeared on Geraldo Rivera's show in 1992. Geraldo asked him pointed questions about why he had delayed so long, disputing certain aspects of his account and even bringing up previous drug-related rumors. The audience laughed awkwardly in response. According to Theriot's lawyer, his client passed a polygraph exam. He even waived the test findings on TV, challenging Griffin's team to follow suit. Once more the case was not tried. It was brushed aside. However, the ending silence created concerns, much way the storyline lawsuit did. Some questioned whether Griffin had settled the matter by paying them off. By the early 2000s, his net worth had surpassed $1 billion. Perhaps it was simpler to make issues disappear. Whatever the reality, those cases brought about a complete transformation. Although Merv never acknowledged anything, the information was circulated around the industry, printed in newspapers and seen on television. They featured one of the biggest stars in television, and came long before Hollywood started to seriously address power abuse. Later, Theriot claimed that I was a horror story and blacklisted me. My career was destroyed by him. Those concerns about how easily a powerful person may silence someone without a court victory were shared by others in the sector. One of the most well-known lives in America was that of Merv Griffin. Still, a lot of his personality was subtly concealed. There was a hidden language among Hollywood people in the early 2000s. It was the way they discussed someone's sexual orientation without ever using the term. People either used terms like confirmed bachelor, or just brought up Merv's marriage to Julaine Wright, which ended in 1976. That was the only question anyone asked, not even those who collaborated with him closely. Nobody ever said it, even though everyone knew. The rule was that, and Merv was among the finest at abiding by it. He didn't simply remain silent. To defend the truth, he constructed an entire picture. His highly visible friendship with Eva Gabor was one of the most powerful aspects of this picture. They attended events together, were frequently featured in the media, and even discussed marriage. It appeared to be a love story to outsiders. Insiders saw it as something very different. This type of relationship was known as a beard in Hollywood. The narrative was a cover, and it was successful. Merv performed his role effectively. He remained unfazed when questioned directly about his personal life. He made a joke. "I tell everybody that I'm a quadrisexual," he told the New York Times in 2005. "I will do anything with anybody for a quarter." That one-liner said nothing and everything at once. He could laugh it off, deflect the rumors, and keep people guessing. Then, in 1991, everything almost fell apart. Two men, one a former employee, the other a TV host, filed lawsuits against him. One asked for $200 million in a palimony suit. The other accused him of sexual harassment and demanded $11.3 million. These were big numbers, and the media was watching closely. But even then, Merv didn't panic. He doubled down on the Gabber appearances, showing up at high-profile events as if nothing had changed. Eventually both lawsuits were dismissed, and just like that, the story vanished. But behind closed doors, things were different. Hollywood insiders knew Merv had lived with various male partners. Some claimed he had relationships with big names: Rock Hudson, James Dean, Peter Lawford. One biographer even said Merv had a virtual male harem and paid someone to bring him adult film actors. His staff might not have seen it firsthand, but they understood the truth. Everyone just kept quiet. In 2006, with his health declining, Merv gave one of his last big interviews, this time to Rolling Stone. The journalist asked him point-blank about his sexuality. Merv didn't deny it, but he didn't confirm it either. "You're asking an 80-year-old man about his sexuality right now, get a life." That was his answer, a joke again. And it worked, again. The interviewer noted that Merv didn't say yes or no, he just changed the subject. Back to Eva Gabor. Back to safety. Merv Griffin died on August 12, 2007, at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. Prostate cancer, which he had first beaten in 1996, had come back. When the news broke, tributes poured in. 5 days later, his funeral was held at the Church of the Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills. Nancy Reagan sat in the front row. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger gave the eulogy. So did Merv's son Tony. The room was full of stars: Vanna White, Pat Sajak, Alex Trebek, Ellen DeGeneres, Ryan Seacrest, Dick Van Dyke. Everyone came to say goodbye. Merv Griffin was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park. His headstone had one last joke: "I will not be right back after this message." The Game Show Network paid tribute with weekend marathons of his shows. Millions tuned in. They remembered the laughter, the prizes, the spinning wheels.